the summer, I did an online course on international women's health and human rights. It was clear to me when completing this course that one of the best methods to further women's rights was to educate them. While this course did focus on non-Western countries, I still find offering a fair and equal education is a problem through every society. Here in the United States, I've had plenty of experiences within the classroom that have made me question how level the playing field is. I've been called names for speaking in class, been one of 3 women in a technology class of 20, and have been lifted off the ground without my consent.
Sexism affects women's access to education in a plethora of ways. Social pressure makes it more difficult for women to ask questions or give answers in class. Learning is interrupted by unwanted comments from peers on appearance and sexuality. Students, teachers, and administrators give women a hard time about the clothes they wear, the things they say, and their very presence in the classroom. The school system perpetuates the myth that women are not as smart as men and are not as suited for advanced jobs and educations.
Together we studied our own local school to see how people felt about sexism in the classrooms and hallways of Northampton High School.
I've definitely experienced sexism while in the classroom at school.
I have witnessed sexism a lot of the times in NHS.
I started thinking about this film last semester in my AP statistics class. I had often noticed a discrepancy in how much women talked in class relative to their male counterparts, and I wanted to see if the numbers backed it up. My project found that the average woman talked 40% less than the average man in a class at NHS. The average woman only talked 1.4 times per class, while the average man talked almost 2.5. Moreover, this discrepancy was even worse in honors and AP classes, where the average man talked a whopping 5 times more than the average woman.
It's difficult to be a girl in a classroom setting a lot of times because you get lumped into like 2 categories, which is like if you decide to speak up and like contribute in class, you're like, oh, the smart nerdy girl, and then if you don't say anything, it's like, oh, the dumb girl who doesn't know what she's doing. And so it's like no matter what, you're sort of stereotyped and like lumped into a category and you really can't win. A lot of guys would get a lot of airtime and speak a lot in class. They would get a lot of recognition, whereas myself and other girls would speak and sort of typecast as like annoying or know-it-all. Just because you value your education doesn't mean that you should be made fun of.
Moments in class where like I would sit silently and I would be like, I have nothing good to say, because I genuinely believe that, because I had like so much like internalized misogyny that was like, what I have to say is not as important, and like if I want to speak, and literally for my whole life I would raise my hand in classes where I studied for hours. I was like a very studious kid. I would know the answers. The teacher would ask a question and like 10 boys would raise their hands and I would raise my hand, and then if the teacher called on me I would be like, I don't really know if this is right, but, and I think it took me a long time to be like, what I have to say is important.
Mansplaining, which I did a short film on last semester, basically just boys in the class dictating group conversation and group work, and perhaps, you know, explaining something a woman or girl in the class just said, but in a like condescending way, and trying to, I guess, just dictate the conversation.
So I took this like required religion seminar at Barnard, and it was a class of 15 people. It was really small. It was all women and 2 men who were like older and very smart, but did not stop talking to a point where like it was almost unreal. And I was like, how is this happening? We're literally like sitting in the classroom and I'll like say something and then all people are like, well, clearly you don't understand Hegel the way I do. And this is crazy because, okay, so you know how there was that thing, it was like International Women's Day or whatever, it was like Day Without a Woman. So the 2 of them didn't come to class on that day, but the rest of us were in class, and it was amazing. Everybody talked, and I talked to this girl I don't even know that well, and I was like, yeah, class today was like really different, and she was like, yeah, you know, and I was like, I mean, it's kind of cuz, and she's like, the boys are gone, and I was like, the boys are gone.
Oftentimes guys don't realize how easily and often they interrupt girls, and then if you point it out and you say, oh, you interrupted me, then you're a bitch.
The young women around you know stuff too, so you don't have to talk over them. You don't have to explain stuff to us like we're idiots. If we don't understand something and we ask a question, don't answer it as if it's so easy and we're just so close-minded.
In science and math, this discrepancy is even worse. A study conducted over the past 40 years, the SAT math score has been significantly higher for men, despite the fact that women make up a larger percentage of honors and AP math classes.
For me, I definitely contribute more in English classes and language classes, but I'd say in STEM classes, boys contribute a lot more in my science classes and in my math classes. Part of that goes along with just the assumption that boys are better at STEM. So I think that's kind of ingrained in some female students' brains.
In science classes, I've had so many experiences where I was afraid to ask a question or to give an answer because I didn't want to be seen as like a girl who doesn't know what she's doing.
The cultural message is that, STEM fields are for boys and not so much for girls. So I certainly do try to highlight important female mathematicians in my class when there's an opportunity to. Which there are plenty, and to talk about the contributions of female mathematicians throughout history.
I definitely notice a little bit more sexism in the classroom, I think, in AP science and honors math classes. Not necessarily because the people who are taking it are like sexist. In my experience in an AP class, guys are more confident in relation to the girls.
In AP classes, I have noticed a trend of kind of a male-dominated conversations. Oftentimes, not in every class, there's definitely exceptions, but I think there are a lot of examples that I've seen of men really taking up a lot of space in the classroom, not listening to other people. I've seen people in AP classes feel totally shut out from the conversation and from the classroom.
We did find that we had lower proportions of girls in our honors and AP math courses, and we're finding that that balance has improved over the decade that I've been here at NHS. And that's something that's been a conscious effort on the part of the department.
Another obstacle to women's success in the classroom is unwanted comments and attention. This comes in many forms such as slut-shaming or sexual harassment. According to a nationwide study of high schools conducted in 2001, 83% of women reported sexual harassment during school.
I have seen sexual harassment occur inside NHS.
I've definitely seen situations that I felt like were inappropriate, like guys going up to girls and touching them in a way that they didn't look like they really wanted it, or just sort of talking kind of disrespectfully. I can never obviously confirm with those girls that it was a problem for them, but for me it felt like it shouldn't have been happening.
But there are totally kids who get away with saying stuff that's really not okay, whether it's sexist, whether it's racist, and they just sort of get away with it because it's most of them are men, and it's just nobody really tells them to stop, and also nobody really thinks of it as a big deal enough to say something.
The stereotypes that are shown in media, black women have bigger butts and Spanish women are much curvier, I definitely think that comes into play with sexism.
There's guys making inappropriate comments in the hallway, locker room talk and things that are just have no place in school or anywhere for someone to be talked about that way.
I've been told that I have a nice ass, I have a nice rack, and none of my teachers, either my teachers didn't hear, or I try to think that my teachers don't hear these occurrences, but I don't know. After any of these occurrences happen, it shakes you. In between instances like this, I feel like nothing can touch me. And then someone says something to me or touches me in a weird way, and I'm back on track that I need to protect myself. They make me feel wary of both my classmates, which is hard for class participation, for group projects. On days where these things occur, I feel like I can't concentrate in class. I just feel like I'm not safe at that moment in time. And then I brush it off, and then I tell myself that these things can't stop me from doing what I love, and these things can't set me back from other people in my class, and I need to keep going.
2 weeks ago, there was an incident online on Twitter where there was a boy at this school slut-shaming a girl at this school who's a friend of mine, and so my friend Lucia and I decided to print out the tweet and wear it on our shirts and write slut-shamer above it. The reason we wore it is we wanted to represent the same discomfort for the boys in school that girls who are slut-shamed feel every day when they come to school.
When slut-shaming occurs over social media, I think that it is definitely the administration's responsibility to initiate a dialogue about how that is affecting the school, because I think sometimes the administration feels like stuff that is said online is out of their hands to deal with, but it's really not. I mean, they do have the power to start a dialogue and really talk to people about why they are saying these things and how we can change that, because it really does affect the entire school dynamic.
When something is said online, you may as well just say it in school, because your followers online are the same people that are sitting in your classes every single day. When you tweet it, you own it. In my personal experience, the person that was affected by this had a really hard time focusing on her education, and it affects the female student body and especially the victim of the tweet.
Teachers and administrators often exacerbate these issues. Teachers spent more time addressing boys than girls for the purpose of conveying basic content, moving the lesson along, elaborating on content, managing behavior, or discussing irrelevant material. Administrators often fail to take complaints of sexism seriously, or else create a climate where it's not encouraged to report these issues. We asked people how good of a job our own teachers are doing to solve this problem.
Sometimes implicit bias on the part of teachers that is gender-based might come into play.
I've had, teachers talking about the girls as a separate sub, not even referring to the class, but referring to the girls as a separate group, as if their education is different from that of the entire class. And I've had teachers commenting on the validity of women in history, and also just teachers ignoring the role of women in history. And teachers would call on guys more than girls, or would more easily shut down girls, or not listen to what they were saying, or cut them off.
I don't really remember ever having a teacher positively bring up the subject of sexism within their own classroom.
Teachers tend, when there is an issue in the class, a lot of the times they overlook it, and I don't think there isn't. I don't think that teachers are trained as well to stop the sexism in their class, and they don't even try to as well. Say with any other issues that we have in their class, if someone says something slightly homophobic or racist, no teacher's really stopping it.
There were male teachers who would just I don't know, treat the girls as though they were not dumb, but cute and adorable in a way that was kind of okay, but I'm actually a smart human in this class. Teachers who would call girls nicknames princess and stuff. One of my friends was this makes me unhappy, this is not an okay thing, blah blah, I don't know why I'm being called princess. But it may have been well intentioned, I don't know. But see, I'm justifying it in my head already. Internalized misogyny.
I do know that there have been instances when students have felt uncomfortable in classrooms and they haven't felt there's a place that they can turn to. And so I would just make it really clear that you can talk to KGB, you can talk to other administrators, and it's okay to say I felt uncomfortable. It's totally fine to come forward and to be honest, and no one's gonna blame you, no one's gonna be mad, and it's your right to feel safe in the classroom and at school and wherever you are.
No one in my history class felt comfortable with the teacher. They were someone who made derogatory comments, not necessarily about certain people in the class, but women in general. This was the person that said, to get through high school, you need to make a friend with a smart girl. And little things like that make everyone uncomfortable. I've never gone to the administration about any of my problems, and I feel that is because I don't think they're big enough. But that in itself is a problem.
I don't think that the school and the system itself does a good job of awareness, and because they have the power to do that, they definitely should use it to their advantage, but they don't.
I think that the administration could do more in terms of not necessarily always punishing students who do sexist stuff, which it can be necessary, but I think what's more important is putting in place education for the entire school about sexism.
I think one thing that that makes me really happy when I look around the math and science department is seeing the amount of gender equity that we have just in terms of the teachers teaching those courses. There's certainly a lot of research that's been done that shows that when students have a teacher that looks like them, it can be influential. And so I think for female students to have a female teacher in a math or science course, that alone is beneficial. I would really love for us to improve the racial diversity in our departments. But certainly in terms of having female teachers, that's something that I'm really happy about, that a lot of students have the opportunity to have female math and science teachers here at NHS.
How are the women of NHS dealing with these issues? We looked into some spaces devoted to female empowerment that have been created at the high school. We investigated NHS's Feminist Club, which I co-run, and the Feminist Theatre Project that produced An Itch in Her Teeth. Later, we talked to NHS graduates who are going to all-female schools to know what education was like going from a co-ed space to one exclusively dedicated to women.
When I came to the high school 10 years ago, there was no organization of students who were concerned about issues around gender inequity. So it was really encouraging to me when students first came to me and said, we're thinking about starting this group, and I was really excited to join in.
I started it as an international women's rights club, which I think was sort of like me and my journey of like, which I'm still in, we're all still in, like trying to understand the world, trying to understand what's happening in the world and like how we can make it a better place. And I think that for me, I sort of wish I had just named it what it's called now, which I think is Feminist Collective. My goal was to address all these issues, right? But I sort of like asserted that they were far removed from here. I felt really strongly that I was only going to talk about these things that were happening across the world, and I would refuse to acknowledge the things that were happening right next to me. So on the first meeting, nobody came, and I was like, are you kidding? NHS was supposed to be receptive to this. Excuse me, why is no one there? It was like funny, right, to make jokes about my feminist club, totally. But there's a point where I'm like, okay, how funny is it, guys? Do we have something else we can make a joke about? Because like, it gets to a point where it's like, do you actually like think that this is like funny? Because like, it's not really that funny that all these things are happening to women.
I think definitely hearing other people's stories about struggling with teachers, like teachers that I didn't even know maybe had sort of like had made problematic comments and stuff. I think just like having a place to connect with other people and like coming up with strategies for like how to deal with that, and like making sure, like especially as like an older member of like the NHS community, making it clear to younger people that like it's okay to be angry, like that wasn't okay the way that you were treated, and you should talk to someone if you don't feel comfortable or you feel unsafe in a classroom, like making that very clear that there are like ways to like work things out and that you shouldn't ever feel unsafe or uncomfortable or like not valued in a classroom.
So An Itch in Her Teeth was, it started off as basically a group of people just coming together and talking about experiences with the sexism they'd had, and it sort of evolved into a one-act play that was completely student-written and directed. That was made up of sort of small scenes that covered various topics having to do with sexism and like identity in general.
The year before it was put on, it was written by a bunch of female students and I think one other male student. But it was just very interesting to like go into an environment where it was just girls, and we could relate on things that like we can't in class. I definitely felt like when I went after school to rehearsals or to cast bonding sessions, I felt like I was kind of going, not to sound dramatic, but I was kind of like going home because I felt very comfortable where I was. And afterwards I was like, like that environment was so unique, and I felt so heard and I felt so listened to, and I felt like I could share things and not be, made fun of, or like I wasn't being patronized.
I had girls and even like parents, but a lot of other students at the school coming up to me afterwards and saying how some of the like experiences we depicted in the show really like resonated with them. And I think that for some people it was sort of an experience that they hadn't had before, where maybe like scenes that they'd experienced in their own lives were portrayed in front of them, and they were like their feelings were validated.
I didn't planned to go to a women's college. I ended up liking Barnard College when I was actually touring Columbia. I didn't like Columbia, but I ended up loving Barnard and realizing it was like a really great place, but it was mainly because all the women that I met there were just like really self-possessed and really cool people, and it just like felt like a place where I could fit in. So I don't know if I necessarily chose it on the basis of it being a women's college, but I think the fact that it is a women's college contributes a lot to the reasons why I do like it.
I took a lot of classes at Smith, and I loved the atmosphere because I felt so much better about speaking. A lot of my classes are mixed, so that sort of does not become like an all-women's atmosphere, but I have to say just being in an all-women's college totally changes my ability to be like, I can assert myself in this space, or I'm working on it.
Finally, we wanted to know if these problems are getting better, and what should NHS do to try to solve these issues?
As a student, I certainly experienced it. My 8th grade math teacher announced to the class, "You girls don't need to bother learning this stuff." And when I was a student in high school, though I was a straight A math student, not any of my teachers or guidance counselors ever suggested that I ought to pursue an education in mathematics. But I'd say for me as a student, I experienced it a lot more than I observe it happening now as a teacher.
I would like to see, I mean, this is something the Feminist Collective has been working on, like some changes in the curriculum to like bring things like a little bit more into the like modern era, including, I mean, I really like that there's going to be, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a women's studies course next fall, which I think is awesome. I'm sad that it's coming right after I'm graduating because I've definitely been waiting for this class all 4 years. And but I think what I'd love to see is that in classes that aren't APs and aren't electives, there be a really inclusive curriculum so that all students that come to the school, no matter like what their achievement level is, will have access to like text by women and like learning about women's history, because I think that's crucial.
It's hard to say punish the kids that do it, because it's being punished one time won't help eliminate the problem. Having one kid get detention because of catcalling someone else isn't gonna make everyone around them say, "Oh, I shouldn't do that." Educating kids to teach them not to do this is where it's at.
Well, I believe definitely redesigning the wellness curriculum is really important, and to have slut shaming recognized as a very serious form of bullying, which I don't think it is.
I think we also could do, like as a school, we could do better in how we engage in discourse with our students around issues of diversity and around issues of inequity. I think there's a lack of transparency sometimes on the part of adults in talking about our own implicit biases and what we do to overcome those. I think that there's maybe not enough conversation that happens about how it doesn't make you a bad person that you have implicit biases, that that's a thing that happens just by virtue of growing up in a society where there is inequity. And I'm not sure that we do a great job of combating the messages that you get from the dominant culture. Social Justice Week was a new thing that started after the International Women's Rights Club, which is what we now call the Feminist Collective, evolved into. That had never been a thing before, and it was the students who were in International Women's Rights Club and the students who were in GSA and SOCA and Environmental Club who came together with this idea to talk about these issues as a school and to bring these issues sort of to the forefront for kids to be thinking about is really encouraging, and it's something that I'd like to see, you know, grow in terms of participation. Obviously there's a lot more we can do, and restricting discourse to a single week of the school year isn't sufficient, but it's a step in the right direction.
The water's cold this time of year, what else is new? Steer clear of open fields and don't obscure the view. When